Hello. I'm getting a lot of
Yes,
interference.
we're going to mute everybody as soon as we get started.
Okay, so I'm looking forward to seeing what people have to say and what you guys have to say with regard to how to use the technology. Also, I will tell you, you are very dark. I cannot see your face.
Okay. Well, hopefully you won't be looking at me for that much longer.
Okay.
A little bit dark in the room where I am. Okay. Diane, I don't know if you can speak. Would you prefer to introduce yourself on the chat to us? Great. Awesome. So everybody can look in the chat. And Diana's had dental surgery, so she's going to communicate with us through the chat. Linda, you want to quickly introduce yourself? Where are you? What do you teach? Linda? Rachel, do you want to jump in? Unmute yourself.
Sure. My name is Rachel Green. I'm calling in from Silver Spring, Maryland, where I'm the Media Center Specialist at the Berman Hebrew Academy, Modern Orthodox Jewish Day School, K through 12, and have a lot of background in educational technology. I have a master's in educational technology and public schools, but I'm interested to hear what other schools out there are doing in the Jewish education space with technology.
Okay, great. Julie, do you want to unmute yourself and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Julie Schwarzwald. I'm the Education Director at East Brunswick Jewish Center. I'm fortunate to have 5 smart boards, which is in about half of my classrooms that I inherited from a Schechter school that sadly closed. And I am looking forward to hearing about the possibilities today. Thank you.
That's amazing. Wow, are you lucky?
Yes.
Hi, Manny, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, everybody. Manny Menchel. I'm based in Metro Detroit. I work at the William Davidson Foundation. I serve as program officer for Jewish education. We recently commissioned a report alongside the Jim Joseph Foundation. I don't know if you've seen it, on educational technology and digital engagement. And right now, just looking to learn what's out there in the field, what's working and what's not, and better understand. So hopefully we can add value to what we're all doing.
I was going to say, I'm going to do all of that tonight. No. Tonight, God willing, we will give you all a taste of what the possibilities are so that you want to learn more. Carrie, go ahead, please.
Hi, my name is Carrie Hershen, and actually, Adina Levine, this is Carrie Apsel. So I was Mrs. Levine's first grade student back in the day in Michigan. I now live in Florida, in Tampa, Florida. I teach first, second, third, fourth, and fifth grade Judaics and Hebrew. And we have tons of technology in our school. However, not a lot of it is used for Judaics. We don't have a lot of Judaics technology, and so I'm interested to see how I can use technology to help in my classrooms.
Great. Okay, I want to pop back to Linda. Linda, can you, at this point, introduce yourself to us? If you can turn your camera a little more so we can see the bottom half of your face would be great. Okay. Hillel, do you want to see if you can drop into the chat, see if you can reach Linda, maybe if she can introduce herself in the chat, and we'll go on to Fran. Fran, do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us where you are, what it is that you teach, and any experience you have with EdTech. I'm going to jump to Efrat. Do you want to unmute yourself? Yes. Efrat, you want to introduce yourself? Either Efrat or Mindy? Okay, I see that you're not Bruce, who's sitting here very patiently waiting to introduce yourself. Do you want to tell us who you are, where you are, and what it is you teach and experience with EdTech?
This is Alicia. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, beautifully.
Okay. I'm the education director at Temple Bethel in Allentown, Pennsylvania. So it's an after-school program. We have one smart board. We have a number of laptops. We have 2 iPads, and everything is underused. But the teachers are very interested in learning how they can use them.
Okay, awesome. So I hope that what we're going to do now, just in the interest of time and technology, this is what happens sometimes, guys. There can be a little glitch in technology. A camera doesn't work, a microphone doesn't work, and we just move beyond it. So we're going to jump in now. And the goal is that today, again, as I said to you, we could spend hours and hours and hours, and I'm going to tell you at the end of tonight's webinar where you can go from here to spend hours and hours really learning extensively about EdTech in your classrooms. But now we're going to start to give you a taste. So first of all, I'm going to jump us ahead. And okay. I don't know, you guys. Has anyone ever heard this from their student? Thanks for that amazing worksheet. A voice crying out there. Anybody ever hear that from a student? I don't think so. 30 years of teaching, not too many students in today's world say that. So what other options do we have? If you want to unmute yourself and jump in, what other options do we have other than worksheets?
Games of all different kinds, hands-on activities, art,
Games,
music,
art, music, creativity, drama, excellent things. Those are all amazing options. All very creative options. Okay, let's see what other options we have. Why EdTech? How many of you, when you're planning a lesson or your teachers are working to a lesson, you have somewhere in the back of your head some shape of Bloom's taxonomy? Yes, I see you, Carrie, shaking her head. Yes, some way. And what's the goal? What do we want to do? Are we happy and satisfied at knowledge or remembering?
what make the lesson.
We want to aim, right, for a higher level of critical thinking in every subject. So I want to ask you guys, which do you think your students are most of the time involved in today's world, in 2017?
We're the lowest.
With usually, or oftentimes, we're at the lowest and we're working hard to get us to those upper rungs of Bloom's taxonomy. So there is one reason, we're going to see in a minute, that's one reason, strong reason, for bringing EdTech into your schools and into your classrooms. Because when we bring EdTech into our classrooms, we're going to see in a minute at the first very simple, most basic tool that we look at, that you can immediately begin to aim as your first step, creativity, and knowledge and remembering comes along the way. So we have Bloom's taxonomy. We have all these other things we could be doing, games, art, drama, music, creating. What about our classroom and how we operate in our classroom? How many of you are working with face-to-face instruction? Can someone give
I am.
You are. What's an example of face-to-face instruction?
Well, it's of course the teacher standing in the front of the room trying to impart some knowledge, which I realize is somewhat old-fashioned, or encouraging the students to interact with each other and share and grow their own knowledge.
Absolutely. So sometimes we think it's old-fashioned. There's still a place, and we'll see even with EdTech, there's an important place for the teacher as facilitator. So instructor-led teaching. What about synchronous teaching? Can someone give an example of synchronous teaching?
Doing, if live simulations, would that be having a Seder in the classroom, or doing a hub service in the classroom where the students are doing whatever they're learning about?
Well, that would still really fall under a workshop, more face-to-face, but synchronous live would be if what we're all doing now, where we're all sitting in our own spaces, our own homes, but we're together as a learning community. And it could be your students sitting in their classrooms together as a learning community, but it's not face-to-face. You're going to see later on, we're going to look at something which is very collaborative, that your students on their own devices can be creating a synchronous learning community. A collaborative asynchronous learning community could be something like Facebook, right, or social media, or something your students communicate with each other at home on their own time that can be shared in a face-to-face environment, but it's happening live. If we go with self-paced asynchronous, we can record lessons, or we can have the students doing things at home where they're recording themselves, and that's a lesson, and we're going to take a look at that in just a few minutes. So all of these ideas, or different types of learning models, should kind of be in the back of our heads as we begin to explore EdTech. And we're going to explore EdTech by looking at one of the simplest things to create, which is very easy, but can immediately take us to a higher level of thinking. And you're going to see a second example we use has some really amazing applications for the teaching of language, Hebrew language or any other language. We're going to look at the Google form. And in order to do that, I'm going to ask you guys to participate in a little mini lesson with me. This is a lesson called the Schwab letters. We've taught it with adults, but I personally have taught it in district schools and in Hebrew schools with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And it allows the students to experience what German Jewry went through during the Shoah through the eyes of one particular family. And we're going to look together at a short video, and then we're going to go on to a Google form together about the Schwab letters. So please pay attention to the video.
Mein lieber Rudi, it's a long time since we heard from you, and we're all strained like an open book.
It is not possible to continue such a life.
When Daniel Schwab found a box in his parents' garage with his grandfather Rudy's name on it, he had no idea the impact this discovery would have. The collection was correspondence between his grandfather Rudy Schwab, who'd sought refuge in Johannesburg just before World War II at the tender age of 17, and Rudy's friends and family left behind in Germany.
Now, how did Rudy find himself in South Africa?
In 1933, when Hitler came to power, my grandfather was the head of the Jewish youth movement in that area. And he was one of the first people that was picked out to be arrested. His best friend turned out to be a Nazi party member. So he got this tip-off from Karl Kipfer, his Nazi friend. The first ticket he could get out of Germany he took. And then the first country that accepted him was South Africa.
Bandits came to visit your father on 8th November and totally wrecked the place. The jewelry was stolen, boxes thrown.
The letters, mostly written in German, span the period before, during and after World War II. They tell the story of Rudy starting his life afresh in South Africa and his family's life back in Germany as Nazi control became more and more oppressive.
Every Sunday he was sitting at the dining room table all dressed up, tie, and he would type away on his portable typewriter with the carbon paper to have the copies.
Rudy's only son Norman had no idea what was in the letters. He didn't understand German, and his father never spoke about the past.
On a personal level, definitely the pain that my father suffered it's palpable in those letters. It's unbelievable that he wrote these things, without saying anything to anybody.
Okay, now I'm going to ask, Lori's going to drop into the chat for us a link to this Google form that we're all going to come onto. Now, our students got a little more background about the Schwabs, but everybody understood that Rudy sat every Sunday writing these letters back to his parents, and we began to unpack the trunk by filling out this Google form. So I'd like you guys to start as soon as you're on the Google form. You can fill out some basic questions about the video that you just watched, and then thinking about why Rudy locked the letters in the trunk and he didn't tell anyone about them, even his own children, and what else you think was inside Rudy's trunk, aside from the letters, symbolically. And then you'll write, just fill in your name, you don't have to write your location or anything, and you'll submit the form. And as you guys are working, we'll begin to see your responses as they come in. So everybody should be able to be on the Google form and working. If you're unable for some reason to be on the Google form, please put it into the chat. And guys, also, if you are not muted, please make sure that you mute yourself. And I will start to see, as you guys are writing, your responses as they come in. Guys, if you're having a problem and you can't hear, okay, try refreshing, try re-entering in the link for the form that's in the chat here, and try refreshing your screen if for some reason you can't get on the form. But even if you can't get on the form, in a minute, when we start to look at responses, you're really going to get a sense of how this works. And we're going to look at another Google form that's a little more sophisticated in just a moment. I wanted everybody to be able to come on and participate on this one. Okay, we have 2 responses so far. As you fill out the forms, remember to hit submit. And if you couldn't hear the video, I'm not so concerned with your factual answers here, guys. But again, this was a 17-year-old young man who fled from Germany, left his family behind, wrote them a letter every single Sunday from 1938 to 1945. His family did not survive the Holocaust, and he hid these letters away in his trunk. So you guys can take a stab at answering the questions here. Right, if you need to, you can copy the link into a new browser if anybody is not on the form. I see we have 3 responses. Let's try 4 responses, great. Let's try and get a couple more responses in. And I want to show you 5 responses, awesome. Okay, we have 7 responses. So I'm going to go ahead, guys, and show you. Now, if you were doing this in a class with your students, you would obviously be walking around and helping them, and you would be making sure that everybody got into the document. And when everyone's responses were in, you would click on responses. And what's the beauty of a Google form? Okay, if it's a right or wrong answer, you see right away which of your students absolutely got the right or wrong answer. But even more beautifully, when your students are going for those higher level thinking questions, you see some really beautiful responses, and everybody can see them, and it becomes a sounding board for that discussion and for that creativity. And oftentimes, actually, sometimes I have cried when I see these forms when students have gone on and on talking about Rudy's soul and his family, and really beautiful responses that get everybody thinking about the experience of this family. Okay, I want you to keep this responses key, because this is such a big thing for all of us who are teaching, especially text or Hebrew language. And I want to show you another Google form, which I'm not going to have you guys come on to, but I'm just going to navigate around, and everybody can pay attention to the screen and follow along in this form. We all know the story of the Meraglim, right? The 12 spies that Moshe sends out to spy out Eretz Yisrael, except for the 2 of them, Yehoshua and Caleb, who come back and do not lie about the land. The spies come back and they don't give a good report. So here, this was a class that I taught with 6th grade girls at Manhattan Day School. Here, you can use imagery on a Google form and ask students right away, shoot for that higher level. Students have to pick a pasuk or a verse which matches this image, the idea of a liar. And obviously, there's not one correct answer here. So right away, you're stimulating your students' thinking. But now look at this for all of you who teach Hebrew language or teach text. It is so easy to put on a Google form a verse, a pasuk that your students have to read out loud. And you can send them. I'm just going to show you how you send them. You embed the link, and they are sent right away to being able to read the verses. You can put it right for them so that they can see it. Then you can have them record what they read. You can send them very easily to a site where they just have to press the button and they can record themselves reading, and they can upload their recording. And then you can have your students self-evaluate. Did they read the verse with understanding? Did they read the verse with fluency and correct pronunciation? And remember our responses button. You will be able to go back and have a clear record from the beginning of the year to a month into the year to halfway through the year to end of the year, how your students are reading. Are they reading with fluency? Are they reading with comprehension? You will be able to listen to their clips and to judge their progress, and they're also able to self-evaluate. And you can even put on your Google form for students. Esther, can I ask you to mute yourself, please? Where students have to work together in a chavruta or in pairs and read to each other. And right here on your computer, you keep track of every single one of your students, their reading and their progress. And on the same Google form, you can ask your students again, shoot for those higher level thinking questions, show a picture. What are the Meraglim thinking in this image? And ask your students, we see that the Meraglim, except for Joshua and Caleb, gave false reports about the land and her people. Create a hashtag here to express what you think motivated the Meraglim to tell lies about Eretz Yisrael. So in one little form, you can get your students interacting visually, interacting auditorily, speaking, recording, monitoring their Hebrew reading and comprehension progress, and their knowledge, comprehension, synthesis, evaluation, and creativity. And all of that can happen on a Google form. So I'm going to stop our share for a minute. I'm going to take a moment. You'll excuse me, sometimes you have to do this. Sometimes you have to mute people who are having a harder time muting themselves. Okay. Esther. Hello, can you write to Esther in the chat that she's lost, we have her microphone. Anybody who is not muted. I have 2 people on the call, Miriam, and a 518 number.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's get you muted. Great. Sorry, guys. When you're the classroom teacher again, you'll be able to manage your participants. Okay, so I just want to stop and take a little bit of a breath, and we're going to unpack what we just looked at. That was a lot of information on those Google Forms and what you can do with a Google Form. So I want us just to look at that for a minute and unpack the Google Form. We're looking at a Google Form. What are the potential educational goals, tech tools, and skills needed on a Google Form? And if you want to drop the answer in the chat, or if you want to unmute and address that. Hello?
What were the questions? Educational goals and technical skills needed?
What could you be doing? What could you use a Google Form for your educational goals? And what kind of technical skills are required for a Google Form? Ah, Julie, great. Google Form allows for longer and more thoughtful answers. And you can go from different levels of Bloom's taxonomy right away. You can shoot for the top. What about those of you who are Hebrew teachers? Have you used Google Forms a lot for improving your students' Hebrew? Self-evaluation, keeping a record and track of your students' progress all year long in Hebrew? Right. A Google Form allows everyone to participate at the same time, but we're going to look in a minute at some other things which are more collaborative learning pieces, which do a better job of that. Okay, guys, so that's just a little taste of a Google Form and how it can be used to enhance the learning that's going on in your classroom. We're going to continue by looking at the Google Doc, which can be used a lot more collaboratively. Okay, so I'm just going to show you a Google Doc. In the interest of time, because I do want you guys to work on our next tool, I'm just going to show you this Google Doc and how it can be used. So a Google Doc you can use with any text. It can be a Jewish text like it is here. Again, we're working with Sefer Bamidbar or Numbers with the text of the Meraglim story, again, the story of the spies. Or it can be used for Jewish holidays. It can be used for general studies in history, in science, in many different topics. And okay, so on a Google document, you have the opportunity to put material. Here, students were asked to look at some verses or some psukim. They were asked to come up with a hashtag that summarized the theme of the psukim and a Snapchat or a picture that kind of tied it together. So what's the beauty here? Your students can work in pairs, in 3 people, 4 people. It's very collaborative learning. And of course, you can provide for your students all of the images at the bottom of your document so that they don't have to be surfing the web. And I want to show you what this looked like after the 6th grade class had worked on this Google document. Now, these particular girls at Manhattan Day School had studied in depth Parshat Meraglim. They knew the story forwards and backwards. And we were looking at it through the eyes of modern day Meraglim and how people respond to the modern state of Israel in the lens of the biblical text. So the girls worked together in partnerships, and you're going to see now their work. And unfortunately, I apologize for the slowness here. It is a very, very hot day in Efrat with hot winds blowing on our electric lines, and that seriously affects our internet sometimes. But I want you to see what this looks like when it is completed. So you see here, this is our sample. I'm going to show you some of the girls' work, but in addition to the girls being able to work in chavrutot in groups of 2 or 3, examine together the verse, come up with a hashtag, come up with a picture, they were also able to comment on each other's work, which is something that the Google Doc allows for. So it's an extremely collaborative way for your students to look at texts or stories. And I want you to see that students see things in their own creativity and in their own interpretation. Because if you look here, you can see that more than one group of students picked the same illustration for completely different verses with completely different themes. But they were creating from their own ideas, and the Google Doc beautifully allows for visual learning, the breaking down of text. Again, it could be a Jewish text, it could be a secular text, and a tremendous amount of collaboration. So the Google Doc I was throwing in to show you guys very quickly. I appreciate we really don't have time to break it down because I want us to work extensively a little bit with our next tool, which is also a very collaborative tool. So before we move on, does anybody have a question or comment about Google Docs? Do you guys use Google Docs in your own teaching? Rachel, you're nodding your head yes. You want to share something about what you really enjoyed with the Google Doc? Love Google Docs. Okay, you want to share something that you really enjoyed?
I think it's also very helpful to use with multiple classes. So the grade as a whole could be doing a project that other students from different classes could check what other students in the grade may have thought on the same issue. So there's a lot of collaboration even outside the immediate classroom, which is really nice for kids.
Absolutely. And Diane, I really appreciate that you added that in, that sometimes we get very stuck on that Google Doc, us Judaic Studies teachers, and we think that it's really limited only to text, that we use it in Torah, we use it in prophets, but we are hesitant to take it out and expand it. And Diane, I love that you said that you use it in all different subjects, because you really can take it out. It can be general studies, Judaic studies. It has a lot of applications and a lot of different grade levels. And one class can have worked on it and another class could be commenting. There are so many different ways to expand the learning community with a Google Doc. So, and it's very easy to create once you create one and you start to see its usage. Okay, guys, we're going to move from Google Forms, Google Docs, into something called a Padlet, which is a collaborative learning board. And I'm going to put you guys, this is something I've used with 7th grade Hebrew school students in a course that we taught on Israel, on modern state of Israel, and the particular Padlet that we're going to go to work on, students were learning about the prime ministers of Israel. And so Lori is going to drop for us into the chat this next link for the prime minister's Padlet. And I'm going to give you guys your task. My students were asked on this particular Padlet to learn about Golda Meir, Yitzhak Rabin, Shimon Peres, or Menachem Begin. They were asked to watch a little video or a clip about the prime minister, and then to share on the Padlet 2 or 3 leadership qualities of this prime minister, and a quality which really spoke to them or they related to. So the way that we write on a Padlet, this is what a Padlet looks like, and we're going to look this evening or this afternoon at a few different Padlets, is by double-clicking anywhere on the Padlet. If you're having trouble coming in and you refresh your screen or you try and put in the link that Lori put into the chat, you should be absolutely, Diane, there are linos are also great, and Israelis tend to like them better. The nice thing about a lino is you can put a lot of information on a lino, but sometimes a Padlet is easier to navigate and cleaner in a smaller group of people. But there are many other types of collaborative boards out there, but I'm going to ask you guys to get started. Your task is to choose one of these prime ministers, learn a little something about them, then post for us on the Padlet by, again, double-clicking anywhere on the Padlet what 2 or 3 leadership qualities you see in this prime minister and which quality you really relate to. So please make sure that you are muted because we don't want to hear everybody's video as you are watching the videos. And if anybody is having a problem getting onto the Padlet or operating the Padlet, you can write it in the chat. Guys, again, can I remind you, please, to make sure that you are muted. Okay, but Ellen, can I ask you to please put it onto the Padlet, okay? So you double click anywhere on the Padlet, and then you're able to write your comments about Golda Meir on the Padlet. Okay, guys, but try and write who it is. I see some of you are writing the specific prime minister you're writing about. Some of you are not. Okay, love all these things about Golda. Us women tend to be attracted to her for only looking at one. She was a role model for women anywhere. She said what she thought, but was able to discuss it through the eyes of someone who was seen to be a caring person. She was determined. She persisted. Okay. Do we have anybody else? I saw somebody had posted about Shimon Peres was determined to contribute to Israel through communication. He desired peace above all else, and he stuck with his goals. Beautiful. Now, Rabin was known as a man of peace, but he was also a hero in war. That they all wanted peace. Okay, but I say to you guys, I really pushed my students to fulfill this task, which is I made them come up with at least a quality of the Prime Minister, as you all did, and then place themselves out there on the line. Why do you relate to that quality? Why does that speak to you? Why do you think it's significant? Why do you think it's important? And as our students post, it opens that collaborative conversation. Great. So I think you guys can get a sense. Nobody went to our Menachem Begin? Oh, they steadfast in her beliefs. Again, going with Golda Meir. Okay. My students liked Menachem Begin and his strength. Okay, so can someone tell me, just from looking at that, we're going to look at some other Padlets. How does the Padlet allow for collaborative learning, and what other types of learning can take place on a Padlet, or what else can take place on a Padlet? Rachel, everyone can work at the same time. Okay, so unfortunately the responses cover each other. Diane said, well, that is, we said sometimes, someone said the facilitator's old-fashioned or the teacher's old-fashioned. There's still a strong role for the facilitator during the use of technology, and that becomes a job of the facilitator to make sure that you're neatening out the Padlet as you go along, and you're focusing on different areas of the screen. So the information begins to make sense. And we're going to look at a completed Padlet in a few minutes. They can move the boxes around. Ah, beautiful, beautiful. They can comment on each other's comments. So that's a different level of collaborative learning than just everybody participating at the same time. They have the ability to teach each other and to learn from each other. Okay, you can inbar, absolutely. A Padlet is also a great way to give over information. So oftentimes, like for example, if my students, when we were learning about the people of Israel, and we wanted to learn about the Moroccan community and the Ethiopian community and the Russian community, different groups of students went to different Padlets where they were able to view videos about the immigrant group, about their foods, about their customs, about their traditions. It can be a learning or a way of giving over information that students, it can be used, the Padlet can be used on all devices, which is a great thing with the Padlet because many of you said iPads, 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 and not everything can be used on the iPad. But absolutely, the Padlet can be used beautifully on the iPad as well. So it's collaborative in different directions in that we can be learning at the same time, we can be sharing at the same time, and we can be teaching each other at the same time. So I want to take a minute and look at just a couple of other Padlets which look very different than this and don't necessarily give information. So in teaching a year-long course about the Shoah, this was taught in a few different places, to 7th grade, 6th and 7th grade Hebrew school students, one of the units that the students learned about was they learned about physical resistance to the Nazis, and then they learned about spiritual resistance to the Nazis. And different groups had studied about how Jews used education during the Shoah, how Jews used documentation during the Shoah, how Jews used humanitarian help one to the other, and how Jews used religion during the Shoah. And we used the Padlet as a learning board or as a collaborative learning board. So what about this particular Padlet here makes it appropriate for that type of a sharing or learning board. No thoughts? No ideas? Okay, we went to collaborative learning, collaboration, everybody learning from each other, being able to give over information. But there's another piece of the Padlet which is also really, really important. And for so many of the learners in all of our classrooms, which is the Padlet is extremely visual. And we can put pictures and all kinds of images on the Padlet and ask our students to put images on the Padlet, which changes the nature of our learning and opens up the type of learning and thinking and creativity. We can have students creating awards. We can have students creating things and posting them on the Padlet. And that kind of visual learning is really easily done on a Padlet. Now I want us to look at one more Padlet, and I want us to look at it blank, and I want us to look at it completed. This Padlet was used in the Miraglim class, where students, after they reviewed the Miraglim story, were asked to think about the characteristics and motivations of the Miraglim. And again, the Padlet was used, pictures were posted here to stimulate visual learning and thinking. And this is what the students posted. Now, someone said the Padlet is very crowded and it's difficult to see. However, when everyone's ideas, I want you to just visually look at this Padlet. When everyone's ideas are posted in one place, the conversation went on as people were posting. I just want people to take a look at some of the ideas that are on the Padlet. And then, okay, that Padlet was very, very different from the first Padlet that we participated on about the prime ministers. So what was the learning that was going on in that Padlet? Hello? You guys all have the link to that Padlet, so you can put it up. It was in the chat. Everyone could participate at their own level. Absolutely. There were some people who were really insightful. It was collaborative. It was visually stimulated. It was all these things that we've been talking about that can be done on the Padlet. You can compare and contrast my answer to yours. Absolutely. And what more than that, if somebody puts out an answer and I read that answer, that level of learning, that might stimulate something else. I might be thinking the same way, I might disagree, that might totally change the way I look at the situation. I might post something else. That level of collaboration happens in seconds. That whole Padlet was about a 5-minute piece of the class. And it was in 5 minutes that these girls were able to just express themselves, get out all their ideas and what they were thinking about the motivations and the characteristics of the Miraglim. And in order to really teach the class and bring the girls with me to look at modern day Miraglim, we needed to review the story. And we needed to review their thinking about the Miraglim in a very collaborative way. But instead of doing it by me talking or them talking or 20 minutes or half an hour of a lesson, The Google Doc and that Padlet were done in about 5 minutes. Correct. It would have taken a lot longer. Each one, the Google Doc, we could have played with a little more because we could have commented on each other a little more, but it was done, each one, in about 5 minutes. And it brought us very easily to a higher level of critical thinking. And everyone had a lot of fun, and everyone felt like they were expressing themselves on the Padlet. So I want to ask you guys, I want to ask you guys just to take a moment and to think about what it is that we've kind of been looking at tonight. These are some very basic EdTech tools and very simple ways that we looked at them. Something that you guys could create. If we had half an hour or an hour of a class working with you and teaching you how to operate these tools, you guys could all be doing them. And I want to ask you guys, what spoke to you? What are you excited about creating, about learning? What do you see you can take and right away put into your classroom that will change the nature of the learning? And I'm going to ask everyone, Lori just put into the chat something called a Today's Meet. So I'm going to ask everyone to come on to the Today's Meet, which looks like this. To come into Today's Meet, you type your name and you join, and then you're able to type your message and say it and post it, and we'll all be able to see it. So I'm going to ask you guys to come into the Today's Meet and tell us what could be anonymous posting available at times. Absolutely. It's safer to express in this medium on a Padlet. Not everyone wants to articulate their idea in front of everyone verbally. Absolutely. But I'm going to ask you guys now to come on to the Today's Meet and tell me what spoke to you. What do you see that you could, even with just this little bit of an introduction, that you could see taking and using in your classrooms to stimulate the learning, to flip the learning that's going on in your classrooms a bit? And what do you see your teachers, because many of you were the ed directors or the tech directors in your school, what do you see your teachers being able to be empowered? Great, Diane. You use Google Docs and Sheets often, using Padlet to teach about Israel in my 3rd grade class, and using Torah in 4th and 5th grade class. There are so many other tools. Awesome. Correct, guys. You just have to put your name into the Today's Meet, and then you can join. Absolutely. Many of these tools, Julie, can be used on smartphones. Yes. Yes. In many secular schools, they're using a lot of these tools. And there's so many more collaborative learning tools, games, Quizlets, all kinds of things that can be used in teaching language, in teaching Judaic studies, in teaching general studies. Okay, Alicia, I like what you said. You have so many ideas of how these can be used, but you don't know how to do any of this myself, so you cannot help my teachers incorporate this. Okay, that's what we're going to talk about next. Padlet's a beautiful tool, Manny, and Lino is a different kind of learning board that is also a very powerful tool. Yes, thank you, Diane, for saying that. Yes. Lino can get bigger and more expansive, and you can do the same thing. You can post pictures, videos, comments. Okay, so I like that you guys all really came from this place of knowing that in order to be able to get your teachers to use these tools, you have to know how to use them, and you have to be able to teach your teachers to use them, and they have to be able to know them to be able to share them with your students. So what's next? Where do you go from here? First of all, we at JETS, we offer courses. This is how you learn, and I want to tell you something. And I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, maybe I'm not supposed to say this, but I'm going to share this anyway. A year ago, if I had sat on this webinar my jaw would have been on the floor and I would have been blown away as a 53-year-old woman who's been teaching since I'm 18 years old in college by all of these tools and their amazing application for flipping my classroom. But I wouldn't have known where to begin in using them, and I would have been extremely intimidated. And I did this No Teacher Left Behind course, which opened my eyes and taught me how to begin to use these tools. And I've been teaching all year using them in Hebrew schools and day schools, and teaching we just did a session of teaching teachers at Matan here in Jerusalem how to use them, and it's an amazing experience. So what next? You can take No Teacher Left Behind course offered by JETS. And there is a 10% discount on our website for signing up, but all of you who participated today will receive an additional 10% discount until July 10th, and Lori is going to send you that information and follow up with you all. We also offer specific webinars in teaching text, Chumash, which is also relevant to general studies texts, and specific to Hebrew language texts. So I would encourage all of you to take a look at our jetsisrael.com website and see what it is that we can offer you, because you definitely hit the nail on the head. If you guys don't know how to use these apps and how to incorporate them in your classrooms, you cannot enable your teachers to use these apps, and you can't get them to your students. So some of you, I mean, Diane, it's amazing. Some of you are using these apps. Imbar, some of you have smart boards. You're already using these apps. You don't have to have smart boards in your classrooms. You don't even have to have students in your classrooms. Your students can be at home, and you can create a community among 7th and 8th graders who you can't bring into your Hebrew school. Or in Chicago, I teach in a school where it's high schoolers who it's hard to bring into the classroom. And we create a community by everyone having a device in their own home. So there's so many applications. I hope that all of you have at least gotten a taste and are a little intrigued into what can be done with EdTech. And I hope Lori is going to be in touch with you. She's going to send you the recording of tonight's webinar, and she's going to send you information about our upcoming classes that we offer. And I hope that you guys will take advantage of learning more about EdTech and sharing it with your students. So if anyone has any comments, things they want to share, happy to hear it now. If not, then I'll quote Diane, Mamash toda rabah and shalom. Bye, everybody.